What's going on, everybody? RJ Ochoa here from SB Nation's blog of theboys.com. Hope all is well over you. We hope you're happy, safe, healthy, and that you're excited because Dallas Cowboys training camp is officially less than 2 weeks away. We've been inching and crawling through this offseason, and we're almost there. We're almost to daily football activities. We'll, of course, have you covered all throughout training camp and all throughout the season here on the Blog of the Boys YouTube channel, so please make sure to subscribe. We keep you updated on all the biggest news, headlines, things you need to know because we're Dallas Cowboys fans. You're Dallas Cowboys fans, so we want to talk about the Dallas Cowboys, shocker here, with other Dallas Cowboys fans. And the biggest story with the Dallas Cowboys this week doesn't have to do with training camp necessarily, but has to do with one player who's obviously going to be a big part of what the Cowboys are hopefully going to accomplish this season, and that is tight end Dalton Schultz. In case you did not know, Dalton Schultz has had some you could call it drama this season. I think that's a bit of an aggressive word, but has had a little bit of a story encircling him. And in case you somehow were unaware, Dalton Schultz's contract with the Cowboys, his rookie contract, expired this offseason. He was up for a new deal. The Cowboys have not technically given him a new long-term deal, but they did, again, technically speaking, give him a new deal. What am I talking about? Well, Dalton Schultz was given the franchise tag by the Dallas Cowboys, like other players in the NFL, some notable ones, obviously, as it happens every year. And the franchise tag is technically a contract offer. Now, I understand, believe me, that the franchise tag can be viewed as disrespectful, that players don't necessarily like it. There are obviously some pros to it. In fact, one of the biggest pros is that it's 100% guaranteed. Now, this is football. This is the NFL. You don't know what one season will offer. Players can get hurt while playing on the franchise tag. That happened to the Dallas Cowboys with the last player who they franchise tagged in Dak Prescott, although they obviously still did wind up giving him a long-term contract even after his ankle injury in 2020. But getting back to Dalton Schultz, the Cowboys have not really shown any sort of willingness to kind of come up to where Dalton's representation seems to want them to come up to. And the reason that is all relevant is because today, the day I'm putting this video together at least, is July 13th, which means that July 15th is right around the corner. And July 15th is the deadline in the NFL for players who were given the franchise tag by their teams to come to terms on a long-term deal. What do I mean by that specifically? We'll look at Dalton Schultz as an example, right? The Dallas Cowboys applied the franchise tag to Dalton Schultz. Now, he signed that. We'll get to that in a moment. But the fact that Dalton Schultz was given the franchise tag means that if he does not come to a new deal, a long-term deal with the Cowboys before Friday, this Friday, July 15th, it cannot happen. The Cowboys, Dalton Schultz, even if somehow, some way, next month, 2 months, the middle of December, a Christmas miracle, they came to terms at the negotiating table. They said, Dalton, we like this, you like this, let's sign on the dotted line. You cannot do it. If you don't come to terms on a long-term deal, if you're a franchise-tagged player before July 15th, rather by July 15th, you cannot negotiate with your team until the new league year begins. So if it does not happen by Friday for the Cowboys and Dalton Schultz, it cannot happen until the offseason in 2023. So if we take a look at Dalton Schultz's contract situation here, we're looking at all tight ends in the NFL. This is, of course, courtesy of Over the Cap, the greatest resource when it comes to evaluating all of the contract situations in the NFL. And what you're seeing here is every tight end, all the top tight ends at least, ranked when it comes to average per year. George Kittle's up there at the very top, making $15 million per year. Travis Kelce, it's not a shock to see him be number 2. Dallas Goedert, Mark Andrews, we know this. We've talked about this. David Njoku is number 5 on this list, and that is important, all right? That is important because David Njoku was given the franchise tag this offseason, just like Dalton Schultz. In fact, Dalton Schultz and Mike Gesicki were 2 of the other tight ends besides Njoku that were given the franchise tag by their teams. That's why if you look at Mike Gesicki and Dalton Schultz's contracts right here to my whatever direction this is, it's identical because technically right now Gesicki and Schultz are on the same deal. But Njoku was given a long-term deal by the Browns that he liked and agreed to, and obviously that happened before July 15th, and that's kind of the standard. That's the deal that the Cowboys now are having to match if they want to negotiate on Dalton Schultz's terms. Because if you're Dalton Schultz, and you look at this, we don't have to relitigate this argument, Dalton Schultz has outperformed David Njoku as of late. So in that literal sense, hey, if you're Dalton Schultz, if you and I are tasked with negotiating for Dalton Schultz, we are going to drop David Njoku's contract and say he has outperformed this player. This is the contract that this player got, so he deserves more than that. In the world of business, in the world of supply and demand, that obviously makes sense. But talking about supply and demand, the Cowboys don't really necessarily feel like they have to have Dalton Schultz the way they had to have Dak Prescott or DeMarcus Lawrence, the way those franchise tag situations worked out. And so it's hard to imagine the Cowboys feeling like they need to come up more than where they're already at. Dalton Schultz is basically, we're rounding up here, making $11 million for this season, just like Mike Gesicki is, which puts him among the highest paid tight ends in the NFL. And look, I mean, again, you can argue that long-term security is needed and necessary and a sign of respect and all those things. And all of that is true. But the reality is that Dalton Schultz is in a tough spot right now if he wants a long-term contract from the Dallas Cowboys. How is he in a tough spot? Well, Dalton Schultz already signed the franchise tag that he was offered by the Dallas Cowboys. In other instances with the Cowboys in the past, we have seen the players that they were negotiating with not sign the tag before this deadline. You think back to the most infamous case, infamous not the best word, but the most famous case rather, Dez Bryant back in 2015 was given the franchise tag, and then that was a very unique thing because if you recall, Dez was still showing up for things despite having not signed the tag and whatnot, just kind of the way Dez was with the Cowboys. And it went all the way down to the 11th hour. It was right literally in the final hours that the Cowboys were able to negotiate that they got a new deal for Dez Bryant done. And I don't know that that's going to happen here with Dalton Schultz because he signed the tag. Dez Bryant, DeMarcus Lawrence, Dak Prescott, they did not sign the tag before these deadlines, and they were able then to use that as leverage. One of the more interesting developments over the last few weeks was during the Cowboys' voluntary activities. Dalton Schultz started to show up. This was after Dalton Schultz had already signed the franchise tag. And by signing the franchise tag, Dalton Schultz signed a contract with the Dallas Cowboys. Again, it's the tag. So it's not your, normal, conventional, traditional contract, but it is a contract in the NFL. It's just by virtue of the franchise tag. So Dalton Schultz was given the franchise tag. That's the sequence here. Obviously had some time to sit and stew on it, decided to sign it, and then showed up for voluntary activities. And we talked about this then. Near the end of it, say, you know what? I'm not happy with the way contract negotiations are going. I'm not going to show up to voluntary activities anymore, which is his prerogative. Good for you, Dalton Schultz. Do what you feel and think is best. But then mandatory activity started, and Dalton Schultz had to show up because if he doesn't show up, since he's under contract, he's going to get fined. And he doesn't really have any kind of leverage to use here, besides the fact that the leverage of the position, the leverage of the tight end position doesn't necessarily work in Dalton Schultz's favor. He already signed this franchise tag. Had he not signed it, I think the Cowboys would be in a little bit more of a treacherous spot here with July 15th approaching. They might feel like, man, if we don't get this long-term deal done, Dalton Schultz is going to be prepared to sit out, hold out the entire year. Obviously, we've seen that happen in the case of franchise tags in the past across the NFL, but that is not the case because Dalton Schultz already signed the tag. All reports right now kind of, sort of seem to hover around the idea that the two sides are far apart. As the weekend began last weekend, NFL Network reported that it's still possible that this could happen. Of course, it's still possible. Anything can happen. Deadlines make deals, as it is often said, as it relates to situations and subjects like this. My own personal read is I doubt that the Cowboys, come anywhere close to where Dalton Schultz feels like he wants them to be with regards to these contract negotiations, because the Cowboys are probably feeling like, dude, we already have a contract from you. You already signed this thing. We have you locked in for 2022, and we're prepared to revisit this in 2023. Dalton had a great season for the Cowboys last year, and it stands to reason that from a statistical standpoint, he's going to perform in 2022 because Amari Cooper's gone, because the Cowboys are going to need more players like Dalton Schultz to step up offensively. Perhaps Dalton Schultz is comfortable betting on himself on the tag the way Dak Prescott did, the way DeMarcus Lawrence did. Perhaps he really wants that long-term security and will then come closer to the middle to where the Cowboys are offering him. We don't know, but we will know. We will have our answers soon enough in the next 2 days because, like I said, July 15th is approaching. But what do you think? How do you see this shaking out? Do you think that Dalton Schultz and the Cowboys get a long-term deal done, or do you think that Friday comes and goes and he is officially playing the season out on the franchise tag? Let us know. My name is RJ Ochoa. You can hit me up on Twitter or Instagram at RJ Ochoa, on TikTok at rj.ochoa. If you want to email me, you can, rj.ochoa@sbnation.com. You can always leave a comment down below. We'll get to those as well. For now, we are moving on. We're continuing, by the way, our training camp preview series. Next up is the offensive line. Very excited to talk about that and the depth, or maybe lack of it, that the Cowboys have as training camp gets closer and closer. So make sure to subscribe right here to the Blogging the Boys YouTube channel so you don't miss any of the fun. Hey, have a great day. Hope you have the best day ever. You know why? Because you deserve it. Thanks for hanging out with us, everybody. We'll see you next time.